Hey guys, it's Dave from Former Glory. Today we have another old lock. This one's a rim latch, a Russwin rim latch from the late 1800s most likely, along with its keeper. This one also has a privacy latch on top, a little toggle there. That's for if you just want to lock the door without the key, which is a nice little thing, especially nowadays. Everybody loses the keys to these things. So just going to start by taking it apart. Like in a lot of my other videos, this is pretty self-explanatory. The big trick or tip that I say to do here is to take pictures as you go or pause the video, whatever. This gives you a good reference as you go. That way, if you just dump all the parts out, you don't even know where to start, where to begin, or how to put it back together. So take some pictures as you go. It's a really good reference. This one has a little spring inside the privacy latch mechanism, and that kind of keeps the pressure on it so it doesn't accidentally engage the lock. Different makers use different designs for that, but that's Russwin's deal here. Now, a lot of these old lock sets had numbers inside, and I'm pretty sure, in my experience, that it doesn't relate to the year. This is just a coincidence. This is 1888. I believe it's more of the model, and you'll see all the parts actually have 1888 stamped on them, so I think it was a parts thing. This is the lube I like to use. No sponsorship here, unfortunately. But a dry lube is best because it doesn't attract dirt and grease. This is nice because it goes on wet, but it dries like a powder. That way it doesn't attract any kind of, dirt and lint and all that stuff and mess up the workings of the lock. I like to apply it in points of contact between the pieces as well as the parts that are going to rub against the case, and then kind of work the piece against it. That way there's a nice film of lubricant between the case and the parts. That way when you put it back together, you don't have to worry it's going to work well for quite a while. Even on the deadbolt lock side, I do it just a habit. Usually you don't have a key to work this thing, but it's just a good habit to get into, I guess. Like to run through the cycle of operations for each part just to make sure everything's working correctly before you put the cover back on. And the other tip here is when you put the cover back on, make sure you don't really crank on the hold down screw. You want it to be snug, but not super tight. Again, there's that marking. This is on the keeper, also marked 1888. If it'll zoom in, there you go, focus. Yeah, when you're putting that cover back on, snug, not super tight, because certain makes you can really crank on that thing and it'll actually bind up all the parts inside. So just snug, that's all you got to do. And then I'll just run through each part, like the top, the privacy latch, work that back and forth, make sure it works. Put a large screwdriver into the knob shank, or where the knob shank would go normally, just to work it like this, make sure it works right, which it does. So here's a little extra tip. Number one, on these and many other, even the mortise latches that are slightly newer, you could reverse the latch in case you had a right hand or a left hand swing door using the same lock. That way you wouldn't have to buy a different lock for a different swinging door. Some manufacturers didn't offer that, but I'd say 99% of them allowed you to do this. So a lot of times all you have to do, take it apart, flip over the latch, and put it back together. They're made to work, one direction or the other, and then you just put it back together. That's it. And same deal. I always like to try and run, put it back together, run through all the functions, make sure it works correctly, and then you're good to go. Now there's one more tip. When you're looking for knobs for these locks in particular, there's two different types of knobs that go with the same set. And this is also an example of typical trim that goes with a rim latch. The rim latch goes right on the door, to the surface of the door, and the trim obviously goes on the other side of the door. And a lot of times they came with porcelain knobs with cast iron or brass mounts. And here's an example of the two different types of mounts that you're going to have for the same set. So lock side on the left, trim side on the right. The lock side knobs have a little kind of mushroomed out spot that fits against the lock, where you can see there. And then the trim side is straight. There's no flare or anything. It's just cylindrical. And that's so that it can fit inside of the trim pieces. So look for that when you're shopping for those knobs. Don't buy two of the same, because really don't do you much good. Thanks for watching. Leave any comments below. Have a good one.